My name's Shelly Green, and I have been breeding and owning Catahoulas, I guess, probably since 2012, give or take, somewhere in there. Um, Fell into them somewhat by accident with my first dog. She was a rescue. Some people, accidental litter, right? One of those. And the dad was a neighborhood Catahoula. So we went to get this puppy. I was in college. And I'm like, kind of same thing, like what? Catahoula, And that dog was a half Catahoula, so not the full thing, but she was just the best dog ever. And so when I got her, I started researching, like, well, I've never heard of a Catahoula, this is really interesting. So the more I researched them, the more I was like, that is super cool. I want one. And I connected with a breeder in California and just started talking to her. And long story short, she had just loaned out a female dog to her buddy that hog hunted right like up the street from my friends in Fresno. And he had just had a litter of puppies and he had a female that was just super. And so I connected with her and got that female. And that was my first, pure Catahoula. And her name was Bailey. And she's the one who started this whole journey of mine. So yeah, it's been a wild ride ever since.
Yeah, it's a breed. Like I was telling you earlier, it's a breed I don't know much about. But can you tell us a little bit about the history of the Catalua as you know it, and where did they originate? And
Yeah, so they were, there's different accounts of the history, and depending on the different people you ask, they'll all kind of tell you different things. The I think it was the DeSoto expedition, but if there's like a quote that they encountered these Native Americans kind of in what would be like Louisiana today, and they described these dogs with glass eyes. And so those were probably some domesticated early version of the Catahoula. And then um, again, depending on who you ask and what version you go with, those dogs commingled with the conquistadors' dogs, the um, uh, not the wolfhounds, but whatever they brought. Those, I can't think of the name of them right now, but commingled. They say there's red wolf in them, although that's heavily debated. But basically, kind of Native American. They're actually one of the only breeds, I believe, that have originated in North America. So there's been a couple different associations. There's been a couple different um, lines. Again, that's kind of up for debate, but there were the three lines that kind of originated. They had like three different kind of standards. They were the bigger ones, the medium ones, and then the smaller ones. And so currently the association most associated with the Catahoulas is the NALC, or National Association of Louisiana Catahoulas. Um, and they're also recognized UKC, United Kennel Club. And there's a big pushback. We don't really want them recognized AKC. They're considered like part of their foundation stock breed. So I don't know. I don't show AKC. I don't know what that means per se, but AKC is kind of more about looks. And there's a stigma with Catahoulas that it doesn't matter how pretty they look as long as they work hard. Um, and UKC is a lot more forgiving, especially in our standard. Dogs can have missing ears, missing teeth, as long as they were born with ears and teeth, because they do, in the jobs that they do have a lot of encounters where they, get scars and get wounded and things like that. So people are worried if they go AKC that might change and that would affect the breed standard, and then they would be bred to be pretty and not the working dogs that they are today. So, well,
uh,
now, so the original lines were all still Catahoulas, but there was like the right line, you put me on the spot. I shouldn't. You think I'd know this off the top of my head, but uh, basically it was just three different breeders that kind of focused on different traits. So the right line, they were the bigger dogs, up to 100 pounds. the Fairbanks line were kind of the medium range, and then the McMillan line were the smaller dogs. Bigger dog typically not going to go as long or as hard in the woods, but you need a bigger dog if you're working cattle and things like sometimes things like that. So the Catahoula today is really their standard is fair, but it allows for a lot of variation. Typically when you think of Catahoula, you think of those really gorgeous leopard dogs with glass eyes, but they can come in a whole range of colors. They can be black, black and tan, black and white. They can be red, red and tan, red and white. And then of course the leopards, there's some black leopards, um, the red leopards, and then the blue leopards. And then of course the eyes. The eyes are what draw a lot of people to them. They love those blue glass eyes, but that's really all for show. There's no standard that they have to have that at all. I have plenty of them that are solid colors, and that's what they've been used in a lot of the other breeds that to infuse that merle gene. And so they're a super versatile working dog. They're definitely not for everybody. I would really say they're not a first dog, maybe not even like a second dog for somebody. You really have to be kind of prepared for all that they entail. There's a saying that they need to have a job, and if you don't give them one, they'll find one, whether you like it or not. So um, they're bred specifically to be bay dogs or hunting hog dogs, and they're more of a header than a healer, like what you would think of like with the blue healer or those other herding and cattle breeds. So they will run down the hogs in the woods, and then they'll nip them or get them to turn around, and then they'll bay them at the head. And so you get a pack of them, and they kind of just keep the hog distracted, and just kind of frozen. And so then you, the hunter, or can go in and either knife the hog if you're super brave, or shoot it, or what have you. So yeah, they're pretty amazing.
Have you gone hog hunting with any of your dogs?
Oh yeah, yeah. So we hunt them in the woods. That was part of a big reason actually we left California. Um, was born and raised in California, and that's where I got my first Catahoula. But and it was kind of this. I'm probably giving away our secrets, but it was almost like this underground network of who caught a hog, who's got it in their bay pen, who's got what, who caught a raccoon. Because some of them, they just like all dogs, they all like different things. So they're really good at baying or treeing or cattle work. Some of them like to do it all. Some of them are a little bit better at one specific area. But it was just so hard in California. You'd get a text and somebody would have caught a hog, and you're not supposed to keep them, and just all the rules. And then it was like we'd come to shows in Texas, and it was just like a free for all. It was just so fun. There's bay pens everywhere. Everybody's great. And so that was a big reason why we chose Texas, because it offered a lot more freedoms with our dogs. So yeah, we do hunt in the woods with them. We've gone to bay pens, where they bay the hog, and there's treeing events, there's working cattle events with NALC. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, so their biggest trait is that bay. The biggest thing I tell anybody who's looking at a Catahoula, I'm like, do you like peace and quiet? And if they say yes, I say, then don't get a Catahoula. A leaf falls on your property, they're going to tell you about it. So they're born to bay, to alert you, to tell things. They'll bay anything, not just hogs. I've got cows, I've got chickens, I've got a goat, I've got a donkey. Give them enough, time, they'll bay it up in a corner and just hold it there. So that's kind of their job, is in the woods to hunt the pig and corner it, and then bay it up. And then some hunters also have catch dogs that are usually a mix of like a King Corso, pit bull, Catahoula, some kind of mix. And they release those dogs. Those dogs catch on and then hold the prey or the animal, so it can be dispatched. In the bay pen events, you actually get penalized if your dog bites or latches, um, onto the animal, because Catahoulas were just bred to bay, so they're not supposed to be a catch dog where they hold on. So they bay hogs, they hunt the woods, they love going after raccoons and possums and anything that'll climb a tree. They'll keep it in the tree. I have some pups that I've sold to guys in Idaho that use them to hunt big cats. So they'll run a pack of like 4, 5, 6 Catahoulas, and they'll bay up, big cats up a tree. One guy uses them to bear hunt. I was like, man, good for you, but no thanks. So yeah, they're just super versatile. And then of course, working cattle, they're great for penning them, moving them around. We have longhorns, and we use our dogs some. Um, they're it's getting them to back off. Catahoulas will work until they drop, literally. So you're like, okay, they're penned, guys, stop. So that kind of thing. And then they've been used in search and rescue. They have a great nose. A lot of people use them for blood trailing, finding wounded deer. They're really any job that you could think of, a Catahoula can do it. They do. They do. The other biggest thing about them, they don't really like strangers. So, no matter kind of how much you socialize them as a puppy, kind of as they hit that 2, 3-year old mark, they're going to know who their family is, who belongs, who the neighbors are. And, pretty much anybody else, they're going to be like, should you be here? Unless you, the owner, is present. So, they do make a really good guard dog. Nobody's sneaking onto my property, not by a long shot. So, um, that can be somewhat problematic depending on what job you wanted, but it's a nice trait when you want to feel protected. And their bark is pretty intimidating. So, again, that's nice if you want like a good ranch dog, to feel secure, that sort of thing. So, yeah. Well, I think I have it. I could pull it up real quick. I think it's between 20 and 24 inches for females. Oh, I got it right. Yes. And then males can be a little bigger, 22 to 26 inches, at the withers. So kind of where their neck points. And pretty much, coat color is again any of those colors that I mentioned earlier. There's no real set color preference. You don't get extra points for the dog being pretty. But we do like a nice, well set head. We kind of like it, a little bit thicker, not quite pit bully, but like a hound. We don't want them, real rangy, real snipey. You want a good ear, not too long, not past kind of the chin, but just a nice triangle shape. You don't want them to flop back like some of the other breeds, and they can't stand erect, so they have to just fold over and kind of make that nice little triangle. You want a good strong top line. You don't want them to be rounded or dipped down. Kind of when you have a Catahoula standing there, you want it to look like the front legs, the back legs, and you can kind of draw a little square rectangle under them. So you want them to be pretty proportionate, nice strong hind quarter. I say a square, but you do want them to tuck up. You don't want them to be fat like a lab or something. But really, it does kind of leave it really open, because above everything, they're bred for their functionality. And so, our standard maybe is a little bit, I haven't looked at a lot of other standards because this is pretty much the only breed I've ever really looked at. And so I think other standards are a little bit harsher maybe for certain things. Like I know my uncle breeds Boston Terriers, and if they don't have the perfect, white collar, then they're kind of a more of a pet, not a show dog. And so, faults with Catahoulas would be like if they're too flat-footed, because again, that goes into the functionality. If they're low in their pasterns, they're typically not going to hold up to kind of the wear and tear of working hard and doing all that. So and then other things that are probably very common for other breeds, like if they have a incorrect bite or things like that.
What's a typical weight on a male and a female?
Uh, Most of my males, anywhere between like 60 to 80 pounds. Um, is I would say really common, and that's going to be, in good working condition. You can have a smaller male, if he's kind of closer to that 22-inch mark at the withers, then he may be, 55, 60. Um, Females are generally about the same, maybe at the lower end, like 50 pounds on some of my smaller girls. Um, but I've got a couple that are pushing, 85. They're just really thick and stout, and you know, they just hold the weight a little bit better. Um, and they do well, but I do find, at least with my dogs, my thicker girls or my thicker boys, they just don't go as long, when they're out on the trail. They hang back. But I've got some, leaner. I'm kind of learning my lines. I'm probably like four or five generations down. And I've got kind of two lines that I'm trying to blend and get more uniform. But I have like the long range, thinner, leaner dog. He looks very much hound like, kind of thinner body structure, but still strong. And then I've got like the really thick, almost pit bull infused, not quite that bad, but you know what I mean. Just the really just thick dogs. Um, but they don't go as long, so they tend not to. They get tired faster because they got more weight to carry. I would say some of the biggest challenges for our breed um, actually kind of come from, unscrupulous people, but that merle coloration that everybody loves, or the leopards. If you're breeding these dogs and you've got a leopard pup and a black pup, people are going to buy the leopard every time, hands down. So, you do have to be careful with the genetics. And there's been big leaps in that even since I started. We used to think it was just, Merle or not. But now we're learning there's actually like cryptic Merle. I have a female that looks completely solid, but she is actually cryptic Merle. So she carries the Merle gene, she just doesn't express it. So I just have to be careful with who I breed her to, because if you breed two merles or two leopards together, for example, you'll end up with, statistically a quarter or 25% of what we call like those heavy white pups. They're going to be mostly white dogs, and they will have hearing deficiencies, and they will usually have kind of malformed pupils and have a lot of vision trouble. So, um, and unscrupulous people will just, sell those pups or put them in the pound or dispose of them, and they'll have a whole litter of, leopard puppies that are easier to sell. So that can be problematic. Um, Other than that, there is some hip dysplasia. That's something that we test for. Um, I haven't seen so much elbow dysplasia, but that is something that, we kind of monitor for. Um, Most of them, though, that work, again, they come from such a strong performance line that they're just, if they have hip dysplasia, they're just not going to hold up. So that kind of limits some of it. But again, you have people, a lot of people that do breed, what they call Catahoulas, and they probably are, but they breed them more for, pets and because they're pretty and they sell, versus, actual show or working dogs. So yeah.
Yeah. So you, with the advent of DNA testing and stuff, it's probably helped on a lot of
Oh
levels with the co-color and all that. Yeah.
yeah.
So you kind of mentioned it, but talk about what health testing means for your program.
So we do the OFA, Radiographic Orthopedic Foundation of Animals. We do the OFA X-ray reports. You can do preliminary before age 2, but I'm like, if I don't see anything wrong, I don't waste the money because it doesn't count, I guess. But after age 2, then you can have take them to the vet, have them sedated. They'll take radiographic films of their hips and elbows and things like that, and send it to the Orthopedic Foundation of Animals. They interpret the results, and pretty much it's kind of what you would think of, if the hip ball is really encapsulated well, then they're good. This would be like a poor animal kind of prone to hip dysplasia. So they can evaluate that. And then same thing with the elbows. They look at where the bones kind of come together and decide how strong of a connection that is. You can also do like the Bayer ear test, hearing testing, and then you can have vision screenings in dogs that you worry if they have a lot of white on their face, even if they're not. If you haven't genetic tested the parents, you can do that to kind of make sure that they don't have any hearing or vision issues. But for the most part, that's what we do at least. And then my dogs work, and then they also show in UKC confirmation events. We're trying to find the time to go to more of those, but it's always something. So um, most of mine either have championships or grand championships in UKC confirmation. And I've been very pleased with the judges. They're very fair. And they do try to learn the standard. So from what I've experienced, they do a good job. I've never seen a dog that's like ew, and it wins everything because of who it is or something. So um I think it says a lot for the breed and the breeders, and they're all great people. So that helps. Yeah, I am in human medicine, but I actually went to school for animal science. I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian before I did all this. So I got almost all the way there and realized, had some friends that were vets and realized, for what I wanted to have a family and a kind of more of a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 schedule, that human medicine would probably be, you know, so I could show my dogs on the weekend and things like that. So, um, one of my senior projects was actually working with animal genetics, and I was working with rabbits, but it was kind of a similar idea. You could have spotted multicolor rabbits or solid color rabbits, but then you always had some that were kind of not quite spotted enough, but not quite solid. And so we called those modifiers. And so I did a lot of research with that in the lab. And so when I got a Catahoula, I thought, you'll see some that are patchwork, and you'll see, which is like they have white spots, but also spots. And then you'll see some which are leopards, which are, what, like a tan base coat with just red, darker red spots, not really a lot of white, maybe just kind of on the chest or on the paws. And so you're like, there's something that is, causing that is not just the Merle gene. And so there's the patchwork, and then there's the Merle, and then there's cryptic Merle. I think I haven't read up on it lately because I've been so busy with, real life, but I think they came out with some other modifier that we just discovered. There's a couple Facebook groups I'm a part of, but I will say I'm a little bit behind. So like I don't have any patchworks in my little pack. But that's something I've always really liked. So, that would be worth looking into to find a stud and the genetics of how that works. But it definitely helps because I understand the genetics. I understand, breeding. I use a lot of line breeding. A lot of people do. There's some people that kind of frown upon it. Um, but it's used in cattle and horses and all the other breeds. And as long as you have strong traits, you don't have obvious faults, um, you can get really, really strong, consistent dogs when you line breed. And so it works really well. And it's been really easy for me to kind of, I feel like, maybe get to a point where I have really good dogs versus somebody who's been doing this, 30, 40 years. They also have really good dogs, but it took them 30, 40 years to get there. And I've been doing this, I guess, 10 to 12 years. And I feel like mine are, on par with theirs. So I think my background definitely helps with that. I look at it as like a bonus, you know. I have horses, and I raise horses, and it's kind of the same thing. You have some people that quote breed for color, and their horse is really pretty, but mine might just be brown, but mine will move better and jump better and do all that. So I did just have a litter. It was it was really hard for me to do it, but I had two solid color dogs, and I was like, man, they would just make they would just make really good puppies. But everything inside me was like, you're gonna get a whole bunch of solid colored dogs, and of course I want to keep one for myself. But then what do you do with the rest, right? You sell them, you find other breeders. Um, a lot of times you can find young hunters that are just getting started, and give them a puppy and help them kind of get their foot in the game at bays and things like that. But I did the cross, and I was just blown away by how nice those dogs were. Just really, you could just see from a really young age, they were really strong type, good heads, really good loins, hindquarters. They were just, you know they're 10 weeks old now, and just every day I'm like, man. So you know color is nice, and it would be great. I do think, I said UKC is really good. It's hard not to like those leopard dogs, and I have probably 50-50. But again, you can't breed leopard to leopard because of the double white problem, so you do have to have some solid colored dogs. Um, but for me, I try to look past the color, and then the color is just a bonus if I can. But for the last couple years, the one of the number one Catahoulas in the nation was actually a solid black and tan.
Hmm.
And so that speaks a lot to his breeding and his conformation and his temperament, because he had to stand out against all these flashier color dogs that draw your eye, but he
Hmm.
stood out with how well built he was, and he's really ideal to the breed standard. So now his one of his sons is climbing the ranks, and he's leopard, but he's built like his dad. So owned by a good friend of mine. So we work closely together, and um, it's been really fun, kind of seeing how well her dogs do, because now I have some of that incorporated into my lines. So it really shows you that it's not always about color.
Here's a little weird question: which world is crazier, the dog world or the horse world?
Probably both. Probably
Okay.
it's a toss up. Yeah. When I did like rabbits, like I was saying, in college, and that world is super super crazy also. It, it,
Yeah, I
it's
bet.
the funniest thing. You're like, we're going to a rabbit show, and it's kind of like going to a dog show, except everybody's showing rabbits, and like, just like the poo. I feel like I'm generalizing here, but the poodle people, they're kind of always done up, dressed to the nines, and they're blowing them out and grooming them, and I feel like the owners kind of reflect that. Some, kind of, they look alike, and there were these great big fluffy rabbits, angoras, and they were just this teeny little body, but their fur stuck out, feet on either side, and there was just this eccentric little, kind of Asian lady, and she would just knit, but anyway, since she showed those rabbits, and it just reminds me a lot of how they kind of connect, how some people look like their dogs, and in the rabbit world, it was really funny as well. So yeah, yeah. We roll in, you know, we get our spot, and we roll in, and it's just funny because I look around, and everyone's like grooming their dogs, and they're immaculate, and I'm like, ooh, should I wipe the blood off of him from last night? Probably, like, it's just, a lot of my dogs are missing part of their ears, just because it happens when sometimes they get a little crazy on a raccoon or a possum, and those things have teeth and they bite back. And my career has been really beneficial in that sense. Also, I've had to suture and staple a couple of dogs. Hogs usually have some pretty good tusks, so
Mm.
that's always something. Sometimes they wear vests, um, like Kevlar, like vests, to kind of
Mhm.
protect their chest and neck. um, Thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't lost any, but a lot of people have, to a hog or
Mhm.
stuff like that. So, you know, there's mine, with their missing part of their ear. staples in their ear or in their back or something. They get cut from a hog or a raccoon or. So the NALC was started by this, wonderful lady, Betty Ann, in like 1977, before I was born. Um, and it used to be really active. They would have, a couple shows in California, some in Mississippi, some in Louisiana, some in Georgia. And over the years, as Miss Betty Ann got a little older, the shows got smaller and less frequent. And I think there's two shows a year, and they're both either in Louisiana or Mississippi, which when you lived in California is really really difficult. So they don't, not to my knowledge, they don't have any connection or um, you know uh, co-training or anything like that. The NALC has really stagnated in recent years, unfortunately. So a lot of my newer dogs that I've bred, I actually haven't even registered NALC because I don't see the value. Um, they have a point system and you can earn titles for NALC, but with two shows a year, you'd have to hit both shows every year for like 8 years to even try to earn a title and do really well at all of them to even get a chance to title your dogs. So I just don't find the value in that when UKC shows are every couple of months and they're all over Texas and all over the country. And yeah, you still have to have a good dog to get wins, to earn titles. You can't just buy your titles with showing, but the opportunities are a lot more available. So my newer dogs, like 2 years and younger, I haven't even registered NALC anymore. Yeah.
How important is the show ring to your breeding program, and how do you look at it as as being important?
Yeah, I think for me, it just helps show um, that well, I think it helps separate me from what I would call like a backyard breeder. Um, it's super hard being a breeder of this breed. Um, you know, I see people selling puppies of other breeds, like we were saying, like French bulldogs and Frenchies and stuff. I know they have to have C sections and there's a lot more involved, but I would say most of my puppies average between $300 to $600, and that's just okay. I register them, I put feed into them, I give them vaccines. Maybe sometimes I make a little bit for my time, but it's a lot of work to raise dogs well. And when you think about all that you've put into the parents and the showing and things like that. So I think the showing is important, um, just to kind of help set me apart from, somebody that can just put two dogs together and call them Catahoulas and, you know, sell them to the masses. So I think it shows that my dogs do meet the standards. But then I also, try to show that they can work, because that's the big fear with Catahoulas. And, to a lot of the old timers, shall we say, the old guys, they don't care that they're registered UKC. It's NALC or nothing, right? So, um, that's what's important to them. And some of us are trying to move away from that, but we'll never please those people. So I think it's important to show that you meet the standard, you have nice dogs, you put the effort in to go to shows, but at the end of the day, if they don't work or do anything, you got to have both, I think, for Catahoulas to really um to really show that you care about the breed and you're breeding good dogs. A lot of the old timers will say a Catahoula that's a pet is a cull. So, and I can see some of that. They are challenging and they challenge you every day, and all that. But like a kind of a side note maybe on that, I brought one of my males to a UKC show. We needed some more entries, and I was helping people out. And so, I think he's 11 now. And I was like, all right, yeah, he's a good dog. He can come, he can show. And he actually won a few of his classes. And the one judge was like, how old is this dog? And I was like, oh, he's 11. And he was like, he is incredible, an incredible testament to the breed. He looks fantastic. He's in good shape. He moves well, and the judge, and I was like, oh, wow, thanks. I guess I didn't think about it that way, but, he is 11. And the night before he went and penned some ranked steers, and then he was at a UKC show. And so I think it helps just show the versatility of the breed. Yeah.
Talk about what it's like living with a Catahoula.
Chaos. absolute absolute chaos. Oh man. They're not for everybody, but once you've had one, you just, some of my friends have dogs. I'm like, man, their dog is so dumb. I don't know. Certain breeds speak to you, and you just get hooked by them. And all of my Catahoula friends were like, why do we do this? Why do these dogs drive us crazy? But I think I would literally have to count. I haven't even counted. I think we have 12. And, they've got a big yard out back where they go during the day. And I can actually, you probably can't, but I can hear them barking because they come in at night and they, all go in. I have a dog room. I've converted a closet into a dog kennel room because I'm kind of a softie and I don't like that they sleep outside. So I have kennels arranged in a converted closet, and they're stacked 3 high, and they all know their kennel, but we bring them in at night, and it's just chaos. You open the kennel door or the yard in the back, and they run around like crazy and barking. My neighbors, thankfully, are a couple acres away, so and then they come inside and they all run into their respective kennels and they get their cookie and then close the doors and they go to bed. But um they're chaos. If there's a stray cat in our yard, good luck to it. They get out sometimes in the morning, and then it's like my morning is ruined because they're just so full of it, and they're gonna go pen the cows, whether I want the cows penned or not, out in the pasture, and you're hollering and yelling, and but they just got a mind of their own sometimes, and sometimes they think their ideas are better than yours, and you got to remind them, no, not so much. So they do test you all the time, all the time. They do require really strong, firm, but you can't. They'll remember. You can't beat a Catahoula for no reason. Um, some of mine have gotten in trouble, for killing a chicken or something, and when they break into the chicken coop, and so they get a SWAT, but they know they did something bad, but they're smart dogs. So it's just chaos, but I love it. So
Yeah, it's the farm life. You need a dog like that. Be
you do.
hardy on the farm.
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you see a lot of people, like people having kids and things like that. And I think you saw my son come say goodnight earlier, and so he's 3. And I was a little worried. Of course, you're like, well, how are the dogs going to react? They're kind of crazy. They're all over the place. They run inside, and they're all excited and things like that. But they have just been absolutely fantastic with my son. And we do have a fenced backyard, and then they have their fenced yard inside of that. In case they get out of that, they're still fenced. And we had some people coming over buying some cows, and my son was playing in the backyard. He wasn't in danger, but my dogs didn't know that. And one of the hands who was helping load cattle got turned around, so he was going to cut through the backyard. And all of a sudden I hear barking. I hear just, they going crazy like they had caught something. I'm like, what's going on? And this guy was standing up on the riding lawnmower with a stick with all my dogs around him because my son was playing 5 feet away. So, and that was a side of him that I really hadn't seen, but I was like, oh, all right. Like, they're really, really protective. And this guy was like, I'm sorry, I didn't know you had dogs. And it's like, really? Okay. But anyway, so they're very, very, very loyal, protective dogs. And I know some of them, I have my dogs, my husband has his dogs, and but all of them just, really protected my son. And that was really because they thought, they were like, who is this strange guy in the backyard? So that was really, I was proud of him. The guy wasn't too happy, but I was really proud of him.
That's awesome. Well, how are they with dog aggression?
They can be a little problematic. And there's some that can't go out together, and they all go out in shifts, or they get separate yards, or we bust out one of the um, smaller 10-foot by 10-foot kennels to kind of separate them for that, month or week or whatever we need to. There's always bickering when you have that many dogs and they're all together. But I find as long as you have a really strong presence that, you kind of nip it in the bud, they're mostly okay. I've had my share of dog fights. We let the wrong dog out at the wrong time, or two females that are mature will just get in a bickering fight. And, you know, you have to break them up, and then just be really careful. But it's just dogs. I don't think they would kill each other, but they certainly weren't happy with each other. But if you have another a dog in a multi-dog household with maybe not strong leadership, and you have another submissive uh or not, I'm sorry, non-submissive dog, the Catahoula is going to challenge them. And if that dog doesn't back down, you're going to have a dog fight. And most people don't know how to deal with that or get freaked out. And so, I hear that a lot with some people have reached out to me, not my dogs, but hey, I got a Catahoula, they're fighting my other dog, what should I do? And it's like, tell me about your situation, or this or that. It's like, you've done everything wrong this whole time. So they can be challenging for dog aggression. They're not a dog that I would take to the dog park as a mature dog. I when I was in California, I'd take puppies, young dogs, um, but that can be problematic, especially because they don't like strangers. They don't like strange dogs. They're like, this is my house, my friends, my family. Get out of here. So yeah, it can be a problem. I really think it'd be fun to get into dock diving, but I haven't looked into that. And mine hate baths, so I don't know if they if they'd be into jumping into a big thing of water for that. But um just we use them just a lot on the ranch, and depredation. And I don't like having a lot of raccoons and possums and things like that close to the house, because we've got cats and rabbits and things like that. So just an overall whatever we need. And their jobs have changed over the years. Certainly when we lived in California, we didn't have cattle and things like that. So um, they've just adapted to do that. I think I mentioned earlier, some people do use them for like blood trailing, catching, finding wounded deer, wounded game. There's been a few that have been used in search and rescue, which is awesome. Um, so I think their jobs are whatever you want them to be.
How trainable are they?
Very trainable. They're very, very smart. But like I mentioned, sometimes if they don't feel that you're the strong leader, they'll be like, well, I have a better idea. We should do this instead. And, they'll kind of do it their own way. And they can be, because they're so smart, they can sometimes be annoying because, they know when you go to the bathroom, they're like, all right, I have 30 seconds to get in the trash. And they know better, but they do it anyways, because they're dogs. And, you know, they're just really great dogs. Very trainable. But you do have to be consistent, and you really have to keep their mind, kind of occupied. They're not going to be happy locked in your apartment for 8 hours a day while you go to work.
You mentioned you had a couple dogs that you placed up in Idaho. How do they do in more of a colder type climate, since they are kind of more of a
Yeah, they're a little short coated.
Mhm.
Having a long or fuzzy coat is like a major fault. Um, so when they're working, I think they're good. Uh, I actually haven't talked to that guy in a couple years, but they're really adaptable, really really great dogs. They're not like a husky where they're going to want to be outside. They always prefer. I have some that would be under the covers with you. Like, come on, you're a dog, get out of here. But for the most part, they do pretty good in whatever climate, that they can be adapted to. I wouldn't take a dog from summer in Texas to winter in Idaho, and leave them outside, but they can adapt to it. I think if they're, grow up in it and allowed to transition. So, my really good breeder friend raises them in Northern California still, and she gets like 12 feet of snow, and they've got barrels bedded down with tons of straw and things like that, and you know, I don't believe she's ever lost a dog, and she's been doing this 30 years due to cold or weather. You know.
Have you noticed any places outside of the United States that have been becoming interested in the Catahoulas?
Yeah, so the breeder I got started with, she has a few that she shipped to Australia, and then there's some in some European country, and I can't remember right now where it is, but kind of little pockets, here and there. So not as far as I know, not real widespread outside of the United States.
What do Catahoula people feel about people that use Catahoulas to use in outcrosses?
I think there's a place, for every dog, and I think done appropriately, I don't have any issue with it. Um, but you know, you can do a lot of good things and a lot of bad things with a lot of things. So, I think I mentioned earlier they use them a lot for catch dog crosses and things like that. Um, Again, if the litter has a purpose or they need pups or something like that, then great. But if you're trying to make some kind of like designer, fancy looking dog just because of the leopard color, then that's probably not ideal, especially with these dogs' temperaments. They don't really like strangers, so they don't commingle well in most urban environments. So that could be problematic. Yeah.
As far as your program is concerned, where do you see it in 5 to 10 years? Where would you like it to be?
Um, that's a great question. I've learned so much in the last 10 years. I think it would be really great to just see kind of. I've made some really good connections. Um, and I think as a breeder, once you start making breeder friends, and those breeder friends are interested in some of your dogs, I think that's a huge huge compliment. And so it would be really great to see kind of some co litters, crossing of some of our better dogs each, and seeing kind of what we can do, because for me as a breeder, it's nice to see my name on pedigree, or our kennel name, Hidden Creek Catahoulas, so it's nice to see Hidden Creeks, so whoever, on a pedigree of a dog, even if it's a couple generations back, because it's like, oh cool. So to just feel kind of like I've made my little mark, on just this incredible breed, I think would just make me feel, you know, really awesome. And a good, a mark that you look at a pedigree and don't go, ugh, they have that in their pet, something like that. I mean, you might always have those people, but for the most part, for people to say, oh, cool, they're out of, Hidden Creeks, whatever, that would make me feel like, hmm. So that's probably my ultimate goal.
Same question for the breed itself. what are you hoping for the future, and what are some of your predictions that you see in 5 to 10 years with the breed? Do you see it becoming more popular or just
It
staying?
just exploded um, in the last few years in popularity. Like even 5 years ago, people were like, Catahoula, what? They were just mostly kind of obscure, unheard of. Um, that comes with it's good and it's bad, of course. I think I would just be very cautious for the future. You know, I really would like to see us continue to have a good presence in showing and working events. There are a few. I don't actually know if they're nationwide. Yeah, there's like a working Catahoula association, and they're a somewhat newer association, and they focus on working events, which I think is awesome. And so, I'd like to see us continue to have growth in those areas to encourage people that, we are a working breed. And I think without that, we're just pretty dogs that are sometimes a big pain in the ass. So, we really need to keep those traits that made the breed what it is. And so I'd like to see us not stray from that in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think with the increase in popularity, that's a risk for any dog breed. So that would be my goal, is to see us, you know, stick true to everything that the Catahoula stands for.
Who is the ideal puppy customer for you? What is their lifestyle, and what do you want to see uh, in somebody getting a puppy and raising it, one of your puppies?
That is an awesome question. Thank you for asking. I would say, my perfect customer is somebody who lives in a home. Some of the questions that I ask are, what's your living situation? Do you own? Do you rent? Not that renting would disqualify you, but it's hard to rent and have a dog, especially a dog that is prone to barking at every noise. And so, uh, the ideal person would be somebody that has a little bit of land, or just, something that the Catahoula can do. If they have cattle and they need help, or, they say, well, I'm a rancher and I go from ranch to ranch and I want a dog that'll just be with me and ride in the truck and go everywhere I go. Perfect. Yes. I would love for you to have a Catahoula. Um, so not that they don't do good with people who have 9 to 5s, but I just say, they're almost like a 3-year old. When you come home, you got to designate some time to spend with them, or take them for a real, not just, oh, let's go for a walk around the neighborhood, but a really good, let's go for a walk, let's go for a run, let's drive to the field down the road and let them run for an hour. So, just somebody that is willing to take on the commitment of all that they are, and really has a plan for keeping their mind stimulated, and keeping them exercised. The big saying in Catahoulas is, not everybody needs a Catahoula. And I think that's really, really true. So, I've turned down lots and lots of people and made a lot of people really angry, but um, it's what's best for the dogs. I've only had one dog returned in 12 years, so I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I think I appreciate people that are conscientious about how they go about selling their puppies, and who the customers are, because I say with bulldogs, half the people or more, I'm being generous, that own them shouldn't own them,
Yeah,
because they're a type of breed that has a different set of things that need to be owners need to be aware of, and that they're not an easy breed to own
sure.
for different reasons. Just like a working dog, like a Catahoula is. For And if you want an easy breed to own, I guess maybe a lab or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even then, if you get a field lab, they're not going to be easy to own. But so I just think that it's really important that breeders really take a a vested interest in who they're selling to. So
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I say in all my contracts, and I make sure everybody knows, is, if at any point I will take back any of my dogs, no questions asked, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, I do ask that they tell me, if they bit somebody or they're aggressive, so I can, you know, take appropriate precautions. But that's something that when I started breeding dogs, I thought, that's just really important to me. And I've, you know, thankfully it only happened one time, and it was kind of somebody misrepresented sort of what kind of home they were. And so, if somebody lies, I don't know how to get around that, but I guess I didn't scare them enough at first when I asked them all my questions. So, but I think that that's important as a breeder to take responsibility for, bringing more dogs into the world, because there is a big problem, you know, and if we're responsible, then hopefully we can not contribute to the problem.
right, for sure. And like what you did, you were able to solve the problem,
Yeah, yeah.
by getting a puppy back. But all right, this is the last question that I ask everybody.
Okay.
If you had all the time, the money, the space, the help in the world, what would be the second breed and why?
Ooh, the second breed. Oh man, I was just telling somebody that I just love me like a red bone or like a blue tick coonhound. I just think that they're cool, and they kind of have that unique, boom. I just think that that's cool. So I'd probably do one of those, kind of houndy breeds. Probably a blue tick or red bone, probably a red bone, because I just think they're gorgeous.